Now, let's focus on our major story of the day. It's going to be about economics and what concerns you as a Nigerian. This is not a business program. This is a political program. So what concerns us tonight is how all of these figures, as released by the National Bureau of Statistics, is relevant to you and putting food on your table. So we dissect them all for you, and also the 2019 general elections. The National Bureau of Statistics says the Nigerian economy lost momentum in the second quarter of the year. The latest gross domestic product data reveals a 1.50% growth against a bigger 1.95% in the first quarter. The National Bureau of Statistics reports on Monday that the oil sector declined almost 4%, while the non-oil sector grew 2.05%, the strongest rating since the last quarter of 2017. So these are really technical details and involves a lot of figures and not your everyday political stories. We will make a sense of it because it concerns you. So think of GDP as a total of everyone's earnings, wages, profits, interest in a certain period, a month, a quarter, a year. So the GDP is the nation's total economic activity, and one of the ways to measure how a government is doing in business, policy, and if they are setting the priorities right. So the Nigerian Ministry of Budget and National Planning have reacted to the recently released GDP report by the National Bureau of Statistics. The minister, Udo Udoma, in a statement on Monday, regretted that there was a slight drop in real GDP growth rate for the second quarter. He, however, added that federal government is encouraged by the growth recorded in the non-oil sector. So let's get a sense of all of these for you and what it means. So I have an economic analyst from the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Sodiq Oladipupo, right? Arogundade. Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on the program. And from our Abuja studio, he's a former member of the House of Representatives, a policy and governance expert, Honorable West Idausa, joins us also on the program. Thank you so much, Honorable West Idausa, for your time on the program. Let's make a sense of these figures, shall we, everyone? What does this mean for an average Nigerian? When the government came on board in 2015, they did say that one of their priorities is economic. Corruption and fighting corruption and security. Economy is also one of them. Nigeria entered into recession and we came out, but now this is the third or the fourth quarter after we came out. How are we doing? Yeah,
basically the economy has continued to improve, but the Q2 number compared to Q1 number, the growth slowed, and which is largely on the back of the non-oil sector. And we should look at it at the disaggregated level. The key consumer-facing sector, they are suggesting weakness, and which is as a result of high unemployment rate, inequality, and poverty, deteriorating poverty conditions. You can, a couple of months back, when World Clock Poverty released a report that Nigeria is one of the poorest nations in the world, and again, low disposable income. So we should look at it at the sector level. You can see agricultural sector, Q1 2018 3%. In 2018 Q2 it was 1.2%, and part of the driver of the performance of the agricultural sector, you can't neglect the security conditions in the north, and again, most banks don't want to give credit to the agricultural sector because of the nature of the risk in the sector. Look at the manufacturing sector as well. Q1 2018 it was 3.4%. Now come to 2018 Q2 it was around 0.7%, and you can't neglect the logistic and infrastructure stickiness in the economy.
Mr. Arogunade, I mean, sorry to cut in here. There were some predictions by IMF.
Yes.
The federal government also had its own predictions of how the growth will look like in the beginning of the year. It looks so much that we are not even doing as much as the predictions of the IMF, which was lower than the predictions of the federal government.
Based on IMF forecast, they predicted a 2.1%, while the ERGP above 3%. But this growth, it was because if you look at it at sectoral level, as I said earlier, based on the oil sector, because oil price has been relatively high, But in terms of the production, we did about 2 million barrels per day in 2018 Q1, but now it has fallen to
what's the reason why we are doing
dropped 1.85 million barrels per day, but it's still subject to further interrogation, as we might not really say what really affect the oil production that make it contract from 2 million barrels per day to 1.85 million barrels per day.
So the non-oil sector did well, better than the oil sector.
Better than the oil sector.
And that's our mainstay. If for you, let's break it down for an average Nigerian who is watching us right now and wondering what all these figures means all together. For a government that says they want to provide jobs, and in fact they say that in terms of the welfareist policies they are making, they are feeding school children, they are giving some funds to some indigent Nigerians and all of. Are these all showing in the livelihood of Nigerians? Talk about issues of inflation and how the kind of life that Nigerians are getting. Are all these figures correlating at all?
Yeah, at the beginning, the President Muhammad Buhari promised that he will be providing 3 million jobs per annum, and if you look at it critically, we have about 3 million new entrants of labor. But presently, as it is now, if you should look at it, even at a sectoral level, you would discover that it is those sectors that are declining as a result of the consumer-facing sector, which is as a result of the purchasing buyer, the purchasing power of the consumer. But the economy as it is, looking at its historical level from the start from the start of the regime till now, though is improving, but we are not really doing.
The growth is not commensurate to the expectations.
Even with the ARGP and the IMF forecast.
So even the plan of the government is not the ARGP.
The ARGP was even a bit too optimistic, because that was
too optimistic based on the performance in the last 2 quarters.
In the last 2 quarters. Because that is above 3%, while the IMF forecast is 2.1%. But like I said earlier, the part of the major reasons why we are experiencing this is because of weakness in the consumers, and because there is a severe pressure on the consumer in terms of the purchasing power. And again, the government needs to fix infrastructure, because there's a lot of infrastructure.
They're spending a lot of money on infrastructure, and the rails is spending a lot of money on rails. We borrowed a lot of money from Chinese banks, and there's some Chinese companies that are working on the rails, and some other issues on the construction of roads, bridges across the country. Those are the reports from the government.
Remember what I said, infrastructure deficit. It's not that they are not spending money on infrastructure. The population is growing at 3%. So there is urgent need for the government to spend massively on infrastructure to commensurate with the demand.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
So for an average Nigerian, should a Nigerian be optimistic with what we are saying?
Yeah, definitely. In Q3, you can see the economy has improved, and part of one of those things we should look at is the CBN new policy in making credit accessible to the real sector. So what we are saying again is they shouldn't emphasize only on the real sector.
Right, so there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's what you're saying.
The service sector as well, and make credit accessible to both the real sector and the service sector. Because if you look at credit to private sector year on year, it is shrinking. So, but part of the driver of growth is credit. These people need credit, access to credit and cost to credit.
So Sadiq, light at the end of the tunnel?
There is definitely light at the end of the tunnel.
Hope, right, for average Nigerians.
There is hope, but we just need to get it right and put our priority.
Thank you so much. Sadiq Arogundade is an economic analyst at the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for talking to us and breaking these figures down for us. So we take a break. Now, when we come back, we dissect some of the policies of government and have Honorable Wesley Dowser to talk about some of these issues, plus the 2019 budget and the funding. Stay with us, everyone.